I'm here to talk to you about today.
Great, thanks so much. Denis?
Hi everyone, my name is Denis Garcia Reyes. I am a recent alum from Stonehill from class of 2019. I'm currently a second year master's student in the Higher Education and Student Affairs Administration program at the University of Vermont. And I first got like the concept of mentoring when I was back at Stonehill through networking and delving my way into the field of student affairs and finding mentors in that way. And I'll be talking a little bit about that today.
Awesome. Adriana?
Hello, nice to see everyone. I was going to say I graduated recently, but it was 2014, so not that recent, but in my mind it was. I graduated Stonehill with a communication major, Italian studies minor, and was very involved in the Career Services Office as well as admissions during my time there. I am currently working in corporate affairs at Biogen, biotech based out of Cambridge. A lot of you probably have heard of us from the recent news over the several months. And you know, I have been and tried to stay super connected to Stonehill since I left, whether it's through the Career Services Committee, the START program, really just chatting with alumni about any sort of opportunities or a career exploration. I found that mentorship both within the college, one of my favorite mentors was Christina Burney in Career Services. I'm sure a lot of you know her. And also outside of Stonehill, my cousin was a mentor that I always looked up to. I always found it really important. So happy to talk about that later.
Great, thanks so much. Chris?
Hey, hi everybody. I'm Chris Gagne. I graduated from Stonehill in 2009. I was an economics major. Afterward, I moved to Los Angeles, where I'm now the Director of Creative Strategy and Research at Universal Pictures. And when we're not on pause due to COVID, we have an LA internship program for the Stonehill students where I'm a liaison for that program and really the main connection for all the students on the ground here in LA. So looking forward to the day when that can return again, but for now we're on pause on that.
Great, thanks, Chris. And last but certainly not least, Amanda.
Thanks, Christine. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Sullivan. I graduated from Stonehill in 2016 with a degree in communications. I currently work at Harvard University in human resources as a recruitment coordinator. And I actually started working at Harvard because Christine connected me with an alum from 2001, I believe. And she ended up being my mentor throughout my whole time when I started working at Harvard in 2016. And I actually think of Christine as one of my biggest mentors because I worked in the Career Services office when I was a student. And I also went to LA my junior year, so I've met Chris before as well. But yeah, happy to be here and talk more about mentoring.
Great, thanks, Amanda. Well, and so on that note, I'd love for the group to talk about what mentoring means to you, because of course we've all had different experiences with it. So if you wouldn't mind going around and just sharing what it means to you and the importance of it.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. This is Adriana. I think that when I think about mentoring and mentorship, the importance of it, it's really making those meaningful connections, and it's really a two-way street. I find sometimes people are like, I just need a mentor and like I can just go to them when I have questions, but it's really a two-way feedback dialogue loop. So I think it's what you get out of a mentor relationship is, you know, as much as you put into it. So I found that some of my most long-standing relationships are the ones that both of us benefit. And it's not just when you need something. I've found that sometimes it's always like, you know, oh, I'm looking for a new job, I'm looking for an internship. Who can I just reach out to? It's really all the times in between that you really want to put work into the relationship. So for me, that's kind of been an important principle since I graduated.
Great. What about you, Elizabeth, as a first-year student here at Stonehill? You've had some small exposure to it, especially through Pathways. What has it meant to you so far?
Yeah, to me, I know I'm still very young. I'm still in my first year, but it was very important to me. I would say that mentoring is the guidance I've received about, or from someone about a pathway of interest that maybe I'm currently on, maybe I'm trying to pursue, maybe I want more exposure to about. So it has really been about, it's more of a learning experience for me at this point because I'm trying to hear everybody's stories, get, a good handle on what my future could hold. So I would say that mentoring is a very good learning experience and about guidance right now.
Yeah, and I love your point about just hearing stories because I think all of us, no matter what level we're in, no matter we are in our path, I think we grow from hearing stories from others. And so I think that that's a great point.
Yeah, and just sort of going off of that, when I was a student and working in career services, I talked with Christine a lot, but I also talked with so many of the folks in that office just about, what I was interested in. And then, Christine fortunately connected me with my former coworker, and, I started working at Harvard. And then while I was there, she sort of like took on the role as my mentor in my office. And, she was also a Stonehill alum. So we had that, strong connection there. And I was in my first job for about 3.5 years, and I just felt like I grew so much. And because I had that great relationship with her and I felt like I could go to her, especially with it being my first job out of college, there's a lot of things that you have to learn when you start your first job. So she was awesome and just so helpful to me. And then, she even helped me with like my resume and cover letter for my current job that I've been in for about a year now. So, I think having those conversations and, just forming those connections, both while you're a student and after you're a student, are so important and can help you more than you even realize.
And for me, I think it's always important to, mentors are typically a level or two or more above you, and just have peer-to-peer type conversations with them where you feel on the same level is important. Kind of, it boosts your confidence, different rooms and conversations. And there's also to me, something that I've always had a relationship with my mentors for is mentoring up, where I can actually teach them things as well. It's a street that way. And it always, keeps the conversation going, keeps new topics arising, because it's not always you that has to bring new topics to the conversation. And then always having an ally. Maybe there's some meetings or rooms that you're not going to be in. If they know your skill set, they can, bring your name up, and you can maybe take on some more responsibilities and help your career go on down the line as well.
Absolutely. And I love that point of sort of mentoring up. It is a relationship. And so it's definitely a two-way partnership as you work with someone. So could any of you talk about an experience in your time at Stonehill where you sort of had an aha moment working with a mentor or an alum? It really had an impact on you and either changed your path or it's something you'll never forget?
I can start. I was gonna say that for me, it always started with like kind of like a common interest in like something. In my time at Stonehill, I remember like in I think it was my second or third year, and I remember having a conversation with my mentor about like just all my interests in like the things that I was doing at Stonehill and like the leadership like programs that I was in and things like that. And like she was like, "Oh, like you can do this for a career." And I'm like, "Wait, this is a field that I can go into." And so, that's kind of just how it started. And from there, she really like helped guide me towards all the different ways that I can gain information on the field. And more went through it. And yeah, that's why I'm in graduate school for student affairs right now. And it was a really just positive experience on that end.
I could add, recently I had a very meaningful conversation with a Stonehill graduate who actually recently graduated in 2020. And it started out as just a, a casual conversation. Like Chris said, I felt on, very much like an equal playing ground, which is, very important to establishing those relationships. But it started off very casual, asking some questions about, her experiences. And then by the end of it, she went above and beyond, opened the program of studies at Stonehill, and helped me pick out all the courses that I would need for a biology minor that I was considering at the time. Um, and I was just kind of blown away by how, willing she was to help me and get me on a pathway that I could possibly pursue in the future. So that was a moment that I was, just struck by.
And it's amazing that such a recent grad could have such an impact and was so willing to go out of her way and help you. That's a great story.
I have sort of a story as well. So I work in recruiting, and one of the departments that I recruit for is the Harvard Credit Union, which is the credit union for Harvard employees. And a few months ago, we had a position open for a marketing assistant, and a Stonehill alum from, I think, 2018 maybe, reached out to me on LinkedIn because she saw, that I worked at Harvard and I had reposted the position, and she asked if we could have a conversation about the role and things like that. So I ended up having a phone interview with her, and she ended up making it to the final round of the process, and she was actually a finalist for the position. And I was championing for her so much, but she didn't end up getting the role. But she took that time to reach out to me and send me a message and connect with me in that way. So I think that's really important, and I think other folks might agree with this too. Like, as a student or an alum, if you reach out to another fellow Stonehill person, I would think like 9 times out of 10, they're going to be willing to help you, because that's just the community that Stonehill has. And, I think it's really important.
I love that you're paying it forward, Amanda. Anyone else have a story they like to share about when it really clicked for them with a mentor?
I'll add, I participated in the New York City internship when I was at Stonehill. And what we do at these different cities, we have often alumni dinners where the students participating get to have dinner with the alumni in the city, and usually someone from the career service department comes down and joins us as well. When I had mine, Professor Ron Leone was there, and we hadn't really met too much before. I had a couple conversations at school, but nothing where we developed, a relationship. And when I was there, I told him that I had just accepted an internship over the summer at ABC at a soap opera show. And he's like, wow, that's really cool. I haven't really heard of any students doing that before. And, at the time I was just so focused on getting an internship for the summer that it didn't really dawn on me like, oh, that is kind of cool that I was able to do that. And just him, giving me that acknowledgement really helped me to give me the confidence to, move to LA after graduating. And then that discussion was also kind of the inception of the LA program, which I think Professor Leone started maybe a year or two after that. And then, once I had gotten my feet on the ground in LA, I got to end up taking it over a few years later. So really happy that gets to continue.
Yeah, and Chris, I believe you were an economics major, and so your path really shifted through all of this too, right?
Yeah, when I did the New York internship, it was for the spring, and I had a life insurance internship. So I just wanted to be in New York, and that was kind of my major. My dad was in business, so that's all I really knew. And I wanted to break into the entertainment industry somehow, and that was my chance to do it through that internship. And now I kind of do the best of both worlds, because I still use my economics degree and my research and strategy role, but I get to enjoy the entertainment aspect by working on movies all the time. So it's a really good mix.
And Chris, we need to know which soap opera.
It was One Life to Live. It no longer exists, but it actually, like, in the interview, they asked me, like, have you ever watched soap operas? I was like, no. And so they said, why would you want to, interview for this? And I said, this is my foot in the door, and I really like to write. So I think I'd be good for this. And they like my writing sample, and, you just have to show that you really want something and provide proof that, you're committed and you can get the work done.
That's a great story. Well, and can we shift a little? This question is a little bit more geared towards our alums. We touched on this earlier about kind of the two-way street of mentoring, and how can you build and maintain that relationship over time? Should you be checking in with mentors? And also, what does the time commitment look like? Because we have, I'm sure, a lot of alums and even students on the call who have a lot going on, home, work, and it's tough to fit a big commitment in sometimes. So can you talk all about that and what it looks like, and maybe if small actions can really make a big impact?
Yeah, I can start on that. This is Adriana. So, I think it is hard because there's so many different priorities, like you mentioned, but I think it's really seeing that as part of your routine rather than like an extra thing to layer on top. So I think, just even setting like calendar reminders for yourself to help you get in the habit of like, you know what, once, every couple weeks, I'm going to check in with person X just to see how they're doing, check out how their job's going, hear any new interesting stories or experiences they've had, and just start building that rapport. And I think just try to do it in ways that are the most natural. I think, especially now that we're virtual, I feel like now maybe there's more time than ever because you can, you know, so many different ways, Zoom, FaceTime, however you want to do it. So I think you should just try to integrate it into your, into your daily life. I mean, I still have professors from Stonehill that I email with quite frequently, and it's become kind of just natural at this point. It's not like, oh my gosh, I have to reach out on this day. It's just, once you get in the habit, you find it's easier, and then it's not so, sometimes things happen organically, like, oh, hey, I heard you tell a story about this thing you were doing at your job. Like, what is it like to work there? Rather than just like always having to go out with and ask. So I feel like, just try to bake it into your routine. And, for me, it was always easier because I am pretty outgoing. I'm pretty social. So for me, it was like, just more people kind of in my network. But if you're maybe not like that, I think it's really being strategic with your time, thinking about making connections that, like someone mentioned, similar interests, something that intrigues you, something you're curious about, and really kind of building that ecosystem around you so that you feel like you have a solid group of people that you can kind of rely on. And then, don't be surprised when, sometimes I always thought it was funny because I just graduated, and I was, people were asking me about my experience, and I was like, oh, well, I feel like I'm 12 years old. I like just graduated. I don't know what I'm doing. But I think it's like there's always something about your story that might resonate with someone. So don't be surprised. You could give back to someone much more than you thought.
And what about our other alums on the panel? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, just sort of going off of that. I mean, kind of like what Adriana was saying earlier, like it feels like I just graduated, but it actually was 4 years ago, 5 years ago almost. So, I think right now is the perfect time to be reaching out to alums to form those connections, like Adriana was saying, because, for the most part, we're all, either working from home, doing remote schooling, things like that. So you do have a little bit more flexibility in your schedule, at least that's what I'm experiencing. And like, I don't feel like it's a burden or anything. If somebody reaches out to me, I actually love having those conversations with folks, whether it's a student or alum. It's like, something that I really enjoy doing. I just had somebody who graduated, I think the year before me, reach out to me about working at Harvard. And she just wanted to know, what my experience was like. And how I liked working there. So, and I love my job, so I love talking about it, and I love working at Harvard. So it's really not, you know, super time consuming for me. And just forming those connections is just something that I really value. So not sure if that was helpful, but.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, a lot of you have, it's easy because you can talk about something you really enjoy and you really love to do. It just makes it that much more natural.
And mine was just going along the lines of, so, you know, setting reminders. I think at the end of my conversations with my mentors, we shift toward the next meeting and start talking about and making plans for what we're going to talk about next if we have that. And if not, we'll just say, oh, let's make plans shortly to meet next month. So I think it's always important in the next few days following a meeting to get the next one on the books if possible.
Elizabeth, as a student, was it intimidating for you to reach out and make that initial contact? How did you kind of go about that?
Yeah, it was very nerve-wracking actually. Like Amanda said, I didn't want to be a burden to people who I knew, you know, your past graduation, you guys have professional lives, you know, busy home lives too. So it was definitely nerve-wracking. I didn't want to, you know, impose, but I kind of just had to rip the band-aid off. Like I said, it was one of my assignments, and I'm very thankful it was, because I don't know if I would have had, you know, the courage to reach out to a mentor, especially being a first year student. I'm not used to having to put myself out there professionally. So just having that task that, you know, made me do it, I guess, ripping that band-aid off was pretty much what allowed me to build confidence, have those meaningful conversations. So it is scary at first, but it's so worth it.
How did you reach out at first? Was it over email?
So what I did was I made my LinkedIn account. It was polished and reviewed by people at the Career Center. So Andrew was my instructor, so he helped a lot. And then I went through the Stonehill graduates on LinkedIn and tried to search for someone who I knew maybe was into biology, math, something that I was interested in possibly pursuing. And then I just sent them a personal note with my, you know, LinkedIn connection request. And I was pleasantly surprised when they reached out to me almost immediately. So that was a great experience I had right off the bat.
I think just to go off kind of what she was saying too. So one of the things I do here, I work with the SAA here, and this year in particular, they are all extremely eager to network with as many alums as possible, whether it's for job opportunities or internships or just to kind of have those relationships formed. But one of the biggest things that they say is that they don't want to be the burden. It's kind of what they say too. So they feel like kind of cold emails or cold LinkedIn requests that they worry that it's not going to be well received on the other end by the alums. But I just think that them continuing to remind them that, you know, they are more than willing to help you. You just need to ask them. They don't know who you are, so they can't reach out to you. But if you do just kind of go out there, put yourself out there and just send that note, kind of like when you apply for a job, you know, you hope that you hear back from them, but you might not. So, you know, it is what it is. If you don't hear back, just find somebody else and kind of keep that going. But the more that you do it and the more that you reach out, the more confident you feel in it. And that's kind of, we kind of keep saying to the SAA students is just kind of put yourselves out there, and 9 times out of 10, you'll be more than pleasantly surprised with the responses and the feedback that you get too.
For sure. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but just to piggyback on that, like I've never said no, you know, whether it's a conversation or it's sometimes been like, you know, hey, can I get back to you in a couple of weeks? Because it's, you know, it's crazy town. But, you know, I'd say the majority of alumni are just, you know, so grateful, I think, to Stonehill and the networks we had there, that it's really just, you know, paying it forward. And yeah, sometimes calendars are busy, you know, don't get discouraged. You know, don't take it personally. I think it's really just like, kind of like Alex said, like getting the practice, because it's true. You don't know them. They don't know you, and we can't find you, you know, unless you reach out.
Absolutely. And I think for students, LinkedIn, our alumni tool, is a great way to get started. And I'm also going to put in a plug for our Stonehill Connect Mentor database, which is on the alumni site, and it's really easy to get started with that. I know we'll follow up with some information after this call if you're interested in signing up as a potential mentor for students. But I'd love for our alums who've been sort of on both sides of the relationship to talk about, what's your advice for students just reaching out? What are things you found effective or that you've been receptive to on the other side? Dennis, I don't know if you have anything, just in terms of, I know you did a ton of networking in your time at Stonehill that ultimately led you to start at UVM. How did you start reaching out? What did you find worked for you?
Yeah, I did like a lot of I feel like I don't know if it's called snowballing, but when you like ask your mentor, like, do you know anyone who is interested in this specific like type of work or is in this type of work? And she would connect me with folks, and then I would talk to them, and then that way, I like grew my network kind of, and it was really. I think the introduction from my mentor to other folks was a really great way to network too. So if you know someone that like um, might know people and that like they can make that connection for you. That was a really great way for me to do that. I actually had an experience recently with a Stonehill student who I think is graduating in May, who's also looking at UVM for the grad program that I'm in. And she got connected with me through another person as well. And we had a conversation, and that worked out for the both of us. So yeah, I think that that would be a tip that I would give for someone who's looking to continue making connections.
I just want to give Christina Burney a shout out really quick because when I was applying for my current job, I went on my current boss's LinkedIn, and I saw that Christina was a mutual connection because they used to work together. I forget the organization, sorry, Christina, but I reached out to Christina and I told her that I was applying for this job, and just asked if she knew Angie, my boss. And apparently Christina reached out to Angie and told her I applied, and said some really nice things about me. And here I am a year later. So if you see that you have a mutual connection, don't be afraid to reach out and just talk with whoever about that, because it can lead to something even better. And like I was mentioning before, Christine and I got really close during my time at Stonehill, just because I worked in career services and everything. And she's a big reason that I ended up here at Harvard. So yeah, so just, have those conversations and make those connections. And like Adriana was saying, most people aren't going to say no. So.
That's also just a good point too, because you never know who's connected to who in your networks. So it's always worth just kind of just reaching out and just kind of connecting with those people. Like Amanda said, like, just connect to Christina and say, hey, I'm doing this. And she said, oh, great. Well, let me reach out on your behalf. And they don't even have to tell you like that. So it's just kind of putting that out there, putting yourself out there, letting people know that who's in your network to let you know kind of what you're up to, what you're looking for. And even just behind the scenes, they can certainly see, oh, well, I have a connection there too. And maybe this might be perfect for Amanda. And then, as you said, the rest is kind of history right there. So it just kind of really goes back, just keep putting yourself out there and knowing who your networks are.
And this just made me think of one story I think it's also like the world is a lot smaller than you think. Like, I feel like whether you're in Boston, which I know is quite a lot of Stonehill alum, or different parts of the world, it's like you always find someone. And, for example, I work at Biogen, and the other day I got an email from a woman I'd never met. And she was like, hey, Adriana, I actually went to Stonehill. I graduated much earlier than you, like 25 years ago. But I'm on the alumni emails and I saw the email about this panel. It would be great. I wish we were in the office, we could meet for coffee. But I said, well, then why don't we just do a virtual coffee next week? And this is being next week. So it's kind of just like, you never know. And it's like, I kind of took that step too, because in my mind, I'm like, well, this is someone that knows the Biogen organization well. I could probably learn a ton from her. She originally had said, let's meet when we get back to the office. At this point, who knows when that will be. So I thought, why not take the initiative and say, hey, actually, why don't we meet after MLK Day virtually and have a coffee? And she was like, oh, great idea. So it's like, you just kind of never know. But I think, it's a smaller world than you think. And it's also, it's twofold. Like, you always want to keep your eyes open because you just kind of never know who knows who. So it's really like, never, of course, burn any bridges, and really just kind of be open and polite with everyone you meet. You never know where they might come from or who they might know.
I love that. And I think one of the biggest and most important pieces of going to Stonehill, having graduated to Stonehill, is that community. And I've never seen anything like it. And I think you will find it wherever you go, in unexpected places. For our alums, do you have any advice right now for those other alums who maybe have been hesitant to get started or were thinking of becoming involved?
Christine, it's Bill Hebert. I actually, so I've been involved in financial services and financial technology for most of my career. And I have to agree, a lot of my classmates and I, we get together fairly regularly from Stonehill, and we're all in different specialties. Some, we have a couple of duplications in the legal field and other things there. But I think Joe made a good point on comment. He said people who like what they do never get tired of talking about it, and that's probably true. But I would never, I certainly would encourage people, because I've had a number of students reach out to me. People are more than willing, particularly in the Stonehill community. I think people are more than willing to help others, and you just never know. I mean, even in financial services, they say there's less than 2 degrees of separation between any people. That's rare. So even if you worked in Boston, but you worked for a firm that had a presence in Chicago or LA or most likely New York or London, whatever. A lot of times people, they do collaborate, particularly now when people are doing more by video. But just never be afraid to ask. It's not even like asking for a job. People want to help other people. And, people who have been doing something for a long time, especially, there's areas of specialization like, financial services or banking or, psychology. I have friends that are in counseling. I mean, things of that nature. People will be more than happy to help mentor them, because I know if somebody mentored them at the time, I think they probably appreciate the fact that they might have had somebody who helped them at one point too. So I would certainly encourage that to anybody that's looking for help, because I love it. Actually, it gives me something else to talk about other than some of the more serious aspects of work.
Bill, I think that's such great advice and such a great point, is that take a look at who's out there and don't be afraid to reach out. And I think with all of the technology now that's available too, our network is wider than ever, and not being afraid to contact alums maybe who might be out in LA like Chris.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thank you so much for that. And thank you for all you've done for our students too so far. Does anyone have any questions for the group? I'd love to open it up to if anyone else has things they'd like to add or ask.
I have a question, actually, if it's all right.
Sure.
So, first I should say I'm sorry I got into this call late. My computer was not booting up at the right time, so I kind of missed the first half of the Zoom call. So if this question has already been answered, I'm sorry. But I guess what I want to know is, like, for someone who has absolutely no idea how to look for, approach, and try to convince somebody to mentor them, how does that work? How do you do that?
Yeah, I can start, because I know sometimes the most paralyzing thing is like, where do I start? I think it's just really thinking about what are some of the things that you enjoy or the things that you're interested in, whether it's your passions, whether it's whether it's maybe you'd want to work somewhere, maybe you wouldn't, and just start thinking through people you know. I think it's kind of start small and then get broader. So, it's not just people at Stonehill. Think through family members, think through friends, think through friends of friends, and just really think critically about, do any of these people do something that might interest me? Like maybe I have an interest in sports. Like, okay, does anyone do something to do with business, sports management? And just start going through your circles in your heads. And I think even if it might not be perfectly something you're interested in or you want to do, reach out. I think, whether I personally, I know we're in a virtual era, and I know that, like, I always think, like, if you can do it over the phone or something a little more personal than a text, I think that's always helpful. I mean, if text is the only option, that's great too. But I think LinkedIn, sending a personal message. I always say when you're going to connect with someone on LinkedIn, add a personal message. So I think thinking about what you're passionate about, think about some areas of interest, think through your circle broader than just, just the kind of few people, and then make a personal connection, because I think that means a lot more. I think people that are over flooded with like calls and things these days are more likely to listen or look at something that has a personal note from you, like, hey, I'm really curious what you're doing with international business. I'm passionate about travel. I just would like to kind of pick your brain. And then they might say, hey, I know someone in this. So it's like, just going to pick somewhere to start. And I think the other important thing is, it might lead you to a path that you're like, I don't want anything to do with this. And that's almost just as important. If you find it's something you're not interested in, you can check it right off the list. So hopefully that was helpful. I don't know if anyone else wants to add on.
Oh, thank you.
And just to kind of piggyback off that a little bit too, really consider the holistic approach of things. So like if you are, say, like a business major, don't look at just people who majored in business because, they may have majored in biology or something, but you may have a list of similar hobbies or things that really interest you that can really have that connection too. So just if one thing doesn't really match up what you're looking at, or if the whole entire thing isn't exactly what matches with what you think you want, still just put that reach out there and connect with them. And you might be pleasantly surprised that, you may have completely different majors or degrees that you graduated in, but everything else may be a perfect fit for exactly what you're looking for based on other personal experiences they had or hobbies or interests that they like too. So just don't let kind of one thing, if it doesn't match perfectly, don't let that be a turnoff. It's similar to what I said before. It's like, just reach out, put all those asks out there, and then see who feeds back. And then something that you may completely not expected may be the exact thing that you really needed or wanted to see.
An open mind is everything. Mm-hmm. Tim, does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you for your wisdom on this subject.
Well, and even to take that question a little bit further, we had a question in the chat about really starting that initial conversation. So we've talked a lot about kind of identifying people that you want to reach out to. But maybe Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind taking this and talking about sort of the content that you had in your first message and how you were able to initiate that first conversation.
Yeah, so most of the people I approached was through LinkedIn. But I think the question was asking about maybe approaching someone who currently works at Stonehill. That I have emailed a professor, and I just kept it short and sweet. I gave a quick introduction about myself, and all you really need is 20 minutes of someone's time. So once you maybe set a limit and say, hey, can I have a quick conversation with you maybe for 20 minutes? That's all I need to, have some questions answered. And they're usually more than willing to find you 20 minutes of their time. So really just putting yourself out there, sending that short email makes a huge difference.
I think personalizing a note and talking about a little bit about who you are and why you're reaching out is so important. What about for our alums? What are some of the things in outreach that you've received that have made you think, okay, I definitely want to connect with this person?
I think, like, you just playing off what you just said, I think the personal touch that kind of helps you see them as more of a person. I think I get like so overflooded with emails every day that like they all start looking the same. So I think if it's something that is personal, something that, like a common interest, definitely catches my eye. And I think it's going to sound maybe simple, but like greetings and like like, hi, like, how are you? Good morning. And sign offs like go a long way, because I think we're just so used to just like communicating back and forth so quickly that when you see someone's polite and like takes the time to really be thoughtful, I think thoughtfulness for me is always a key one. And I think just being genuine and just being yourself and letting that come through in how you communicate, for me as someone in communications, that really is important.
Yeah, and I think even to add to that, really showing that you care and you've done your research, and maybe showing that you've taken some time to look at that person's LinkedIn or their background and incorporating that into the first message.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say, Christine, too, is, really taking the time to look at that person's LinkedIn and see, what their experience is. And like Adriana was saying, find that common interest. And the personal touch is always really nice. And yeah, so I would say the biggest thing is just doing your research. Don't go onto LinkedIn and mass message everybody who went to Stonehill, because obviously that's not going to get you very far, but to just be very intentional about who you reach out to form those connections.
Yeah, and Chris, I don't know if you would have anything to add to that. I know you've had a lot of students and alums reach out to you, many of whom are looking to make the move across the country. Is there anything else you would add to that?
I think that's all right. I think there's also some etiquette to it where, there have been times where someone will reach out to me and I'll respond to them. They'll ask me a question. If I don't answer them the next day, they'll send another email to me. Maybe just give a couple of days when you reach out to someone for them to finish something up. But I always find like to try to make that connection quickly, because I often learn so much from the Stonehill students that reach out to me. And they often have, a lot more confidence than I did when I was a student. And I admire that. And I can even take that for, however they reached out to me, it obviously was effective. I can use their skills to reach out to others myself. So always learning from students, alumni, and everybody that I can.
Yeah, we're all learning as we go. And I think you also had an important point with gratitude. I think always being gracious of someone's time, because this isn't their first job, their first responsibility, but they are taking the time out because they care and they want to reply in a meaningful way. So just having some patience in the process, especially in this crazy time, I think really goes a long way, and just thanking them for everything. We had another question in the chat that I'm going to go ahead and read right now. So someone who's attempting a career transition, but does not have recent experience in that field on paper on their resume. So how would you recommend finding jobs, reaching out, building your network when recruitment is so heavily based on what someone has done most recently? And I think we did, some of what we had talked about a little bit more early on was really finding some commonality. It doesn't necessarily have to be in job experience, but for our alums, what would you say about that piece?
I think show some initiative that you've really researched and tried to learn the skills needed for this next job. Because if you don't put in the time before you actually make that career move, I think that it may show that you're not as sincere about it. So just I don't think you can go into something cold without actually putting in the work. You don't have to have the experience, but just show that maybe in after hours times, you're really trying to work on your skills.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, it might not always be a paid opportunity or a formal opportunity, but looking for like volunteer or kind of extra that you can do, because I find that's a question I get a lot. It's like, you can't make up for lost time, but I think it's just how you look for opportunities where you can go above and do extra, whether it's volunteering or something in addition. And then I think also just when you tell your story, telling a story of versatility and how, even though it's not necessarily like if they're looking for X years of something, you can kind of show how X years of something else kind of can help, translate to that. It's not always an even one for one, but I find that especially when we're hiring, like, we very rarely go for exactly someone that fits the job profile. Very rarely. And it's like, it's really just showing that, yeah, you can probably handle the basics, but like do bring to the party, so to speak, that can help get the job done. So, look for those opportunities. They might not be paid. It might be painful in that sense, but try to get some experience where you can.
And there are so many good resources out there now. I'm finding so many discounted and even free trainings and certifications that you can do. I know HubSpot has a number of them. LinkedIn Learning is a great site to be using. So there are different ways that you can get it. But I also think that one of the greatest benefits to talking with alums is you're learning from their experience and how they got to where they are. So picking up on things that maybe they've done that you can pick up on to help you get to where you want to be.
Excuse me, I had a comment about, changing careers. Oftentimes, the job that you're in has parallels to the career path you want to take. And it might just be that someone else needs to help you understand what those parallels are.
Yep.
I know I helped somebody at one time, not a Stonehill grad, who was looking to change careers. And if you have enough of a conversation about it, I think you learn what the parallels are, and a lot of people are surprised that they do have that. And I also agree that volunteering in the career you want to be in is very, very helpful, because most of the nonprofits are anxious for that kind of help.
Mm-hmm. Susan, those are great points. And a lot of what we talk about in conversations with our students and alums in the Career Development Center are transferable skills and helping our students and alums articulate those and find them in their experiences. And so I think that that's such a great point. A lot of times you do have skills that you don't even realize that align with what you're looking to do.
And I think too that this kind of to tie what everyone really has been saying together too, this is really a chance for when you apply for jobs that you really use your cover letter to your advantage. Really, if you don't feel like your resume matches up point for what the job description is, really spend the time on putting a thoughtful cover letter together, kind of explaining why you still feel like you are a great candidate for this job, and then explaining your volunteer experience or explaining those parallels that you have in your current job and how that might fit. But so I think that sometimes the cover letters get a little underused in some instances. So really kind of put the thought and effort into not necessarily writing a whole book about your life, but really kind of putting a succinct kind of, this is who I am, this is why I applied for this job, this is why I think you should hire me, and really just kind of tying in what your experience is to how you feel that you are best suited for this job.
Yeah, and going off of sort of what Alex and Christine were both saying, in my first job out of college, I was an assistant. So, I got a lot of experience there. And then I sort of transitioned into human resources, which I had no experience with. I hadn't done any human resources internships. My first job was not in human resources, but to Christine and Alex's points, I had a lot of transferable skills between the two. So I was able to write a compelling cover letter that highlighted, I had this experience when I worked in career services at the Harvard Kennedy School, which will help me succeed in this role in human resources. And also another thing too, a few years into my first job, I started thinking I might want to transition to human resources. So I connected with somebody at Harvard who I had a relationship with that worked in human resources. And we just talked about her role and her experience and how she got there. And that really helped me too. So, even if you're in your current job and you're potentially looking to make a shift, those connections are still really valuable and can help you get to the point that you want to be at.
Thanks, Amanda. All great advice. We have just about 5 minutes left, so I don't know if there are any other questions. For our speakers, is there anything else you would like to add that you think is really important as a takeaway for either our students or alums that we haven't hit on yet? I think just in terms of opportunities for finding mentors, you know, on the student side of things at the Career Development Center, you can set up an appointment with us at any time, and we're happy to help you start that search and work those initial emails. And there are some great resources online as well. I know the Muse is one that we use quite a bit, that we share with our students and alums as they're kind of crafting that first message and that first email. So please let us know. We're happy to help on both sides. And then we also have the Stonehill Connect Mentor database, which is right on that stonehillalumni.org site. And all you have to do, you already have a profile, is just click off, I'd like to become a career mentor. And you can also choose how little or how much you want to be involved, whether it's just emailing with students or if you're interested in being involved in something like this down the road. And we're so grateful for everyone who's been here today and especially our panelists. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck
Thank
to everyone.
you.
Thank
And we'll
you.
be sending some
Thank you,
follow-up
guys.
emails. So for our students who want to learn how to get started, for our alums who want to learn how to get started, we'll follow up with some information, but please don't hesitate to reach out if we can help with anything in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
great rest of the day.